everyone, welcome. You've come to the right place. A session filled with business intelligence, marketing, sponsorship, community engagement, all the things that people like you and me are dreaming about when you work in community sports. We have some great speakers here today. The format that we're trying to employ is a little similar to those that were in the previous session on safe sport culture and air quality. You know, after Alison cleared the air, we heard about the healthy breathing. You have to put a little bit of a pun there, Dave. Come on. And so we will do a similar format here. It's quick fire, 4 speakers, about 10 minutes in duration each, and then we'll do questions at the end and try to somehow magically keep it within the hour that we have allotted so you can still make it to the next session on time. So just by way of quick introduction, I will try to keep it short and sweet. The gentleman to my right, Patrick Baker from our partners at Toronto FC, will kick us off. He will, of course, go into the content, maybe his own background. It's a bit like yesterday's speed dating, only better. Then we will move over to the gentleman over there. We'll wait on Wheat, our friends at Nuthers, who will talk to you about why it is so important to recognize your volunteers and celebrate them and how you can go about it. Then we go to the gentleman in front here, Sean Guest from the Canadian Premier League, who will share some case studies around community engagement and how you can really bring your organizational brand into the community around you. Take some of those best practices at the pro level and bring them down into your grassroots environment. And then last but certainly not least, Bryce Eldridge from our friends at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, a maven of esports, and obviously I know we have a lot of esports aficionados in the crowd. He will tell you a little bit more about how you can use esports as a marketing tool to engage with those Gen Z people that John Herman talked about this morning. So lots of fun stuff. Without further ado, Pat, over to you.
Yeah. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I clearly lost the short straw here by going first. So I'll introduce myself, Patrick Baker, Director of Business Operations for Toronto FC. I've been with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment for just over 15 years now. I spent the majority of that time in our Global Partnerships Division department, running our partnerships business for Toronto FC. So I've been a day oneer. I saw the first game. I was one of the people out there picking up seat cushions in 2007 when everyone was throwing them on the field when Danny Ticchio scored his first goal. So I've been around the block a few times on this. So Bjorn mentioned talking a little bit about the business of Toronto FC itself. So what I'd love to do is kind of give a quick snapshot as to where Toronto FC was, where Toronto FC is going, and then I'm going to jump quickly into kind of, as a company in Maple Leaf Sports, but also with Toronto FC, how we manage to sell our partnerships business, which hopefully correlates to some on the local level and what we can start doing at a local level with your clubs and starting to figure out some of that stuff too. And anywhere I can help, please jump in with a Q&A or anything like that. So we're going to start with this. Soccer is a culture of its own. We all know this. It breaks the language barrier, the status barrier, the economic barrier, and it unites the world. We just saw a World Cup. It was unbelievable. To see Canada on the world stage was something that a lot of us hadn't seen in a long, long, long time, if ever. So that was an unbelievable piece for us. At Toronto FC, we're expanding our cultural reach right now. We brought in some significant players, both from an economic standpoint, but also from a cultural piece, bringing in a couple strong Italian players, really digging into our Italian heritage, which is strong in Toronto, and really digging into a group that hasn't really been part of Toronto FC as we've moved forward, bringing in Lorenzo and Fetty and a few other players there as well. I'd like to give a quick background on Toronto FC. First couple of years were tough breaking into the market. Toronto FC was purchased as a $10 million franchise fee. St. Louis just purchased their team. They'll be the 2019 this year for over $400 million. TFC is now valued at over $700 million. And LAFC was just named the first billion-dollar franchise in Major League Soccer. So since 2007, Major League Soccer has grown larger than any of the 5 major sports in North America, and we only expect to continue to see that grow. For 2016 to 2020, Toronto FC is the winningest team in Major League Soccer, winning 9 trophies, 1 MLS Cup, 3 Eastern Conference Championships, and 5 Canadian Championships, or that's 8 trophies. And we currently A lot of people forget because of the pandemic in 2020, we were first sent to Orlando for a tournament and then played out of Hartford in empty stadiums. We were one game away from winning the Supporters Shield that year as well. We are not in a rebuild right now. We see it as a retool. We believe we have the strongest starting 11 in all of Major League Soccer right now, and are currently continuing to work on our depth, because as we'll see, there are a lot of new competitions coming into the world of soccer here in North America. But before I get to that, the rise of Canadian soccer. Like I just said, we've seen it all. So as I talked about us bringing in our Italians, we've also brought in a number of Canadians into our team as well. Richie Larea, Jonathan Osorio, both homegrown players with TFC originally. We brought Richie back from a loan, and we brought back Mark Anthony Kay, who started in our academy. We had sent him to somewhere else in MLS to play with LAFC, and then we brought him back now to continue to build the mainstay of our Canadian piece of our roster as well. We just signed a couple more homegrown players last night. Kobe Franklin has joined our team as another Canadian on our roster. It is something that is very important to us to continue to build Canadian soccer. And as we all know, the Canadian men's national team was mainly comprised of players from Ontario. There's a strong hotbed in this marketplace, and we know that we want to have the best players playing here in Toronto FC to give all the kids an opportunity to understand where they want to aspire to play. Just while I'm on this as well, many of you may know, some of you may not know, recently there's been an announcement that CONCACAF and CONMEBOL have joined forces. So Copa America will now be not only a South American tournament, it will be a South American and North American tournament. So Canada, US, Mexico will all join the fray. This is a massive piece for the growth of Canadian soccer as well, to continue to grow the competition that these teams will play against, with the likes of Argentina, Brazil, you name it. I won't dive too deep into this one. I think we all know a lot of this. It's a game that resonates with everybody here in Ontario. The way that we see our numbers when we are out pitching is there's a million number of registered soccer participants in Canada, 500,000 in Ontario. 1 in every 4 households has got somebody playing soccer in this province. It's the #1 most participated sport in the province and in the country. It's one of the most affordable. It is obviously one of the sports that we are most proud about. And what I like to quickly touch base on here, and Bjorn mentioned it, between Toronto FC and Ontario Soccer, we do have a partnership, a business partnership that touches on a lot of things. So there are ticketing aspects, marketing aspects, business intelligence, data analytics, technology. These are all things that we are working on. I think you might see a lot of these come through newsletters, some news that comes through that. There's a lot more to come here in our next 5 years, Bjorn? 5 years of this partnership, and what will continue to be. But we hope to bring some big things to help Ontario Soccer and Toronto FC thrive here in the future. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but this is where we're going right now. So when it talks about partnerships and how we're selling it in the market, everything leads to 2026. Everything leads to 2026. Every corporation in the GTA, every corporation in Ontario, every corporation in Canada is thinking about what the next big thing is. The next big thing is 2026. It hasn't been announced yet, but Toronto is expected to host up to 5 games at BMO Field. BMO Field is going to get a complete retrofit to expand it to 40,000 seats. 45,000 seats actually. But as we are working through all of our partnerships right now, it is all about how do you get your share of voice in the market leading into World Cup. You obviously can't market World Cup. You can't say that you're a partner of World Cup, but you can be a part of soccer in this province, in this country, and you can start have your share of voice towards 2026, which is going to be the biggest event in this continent. Okay. So Toronto FC itself, this is a new TFC. We brought in the likes of Lorenzo Insigne, Federico Bernardeschi, Mark Anthony Kay, as I mentioned, Sean Johnson, Matt Hedges, Jonathan Osorio, Richie Larea. This team is built for success now. I mentioned our 5 years from 2016 to 2020. We saw a blip during COVID. We expect to go back into our 5-year window right now. This is our 5-year window of success right through 2026. So we built a plan coming out of 2021, a 5-year strategy on how we get ourselves through 26 and into 27. And we like to continue to see ourselves. I talked about LAFC becoming $1 billion club. That's where this franchise is. That's where this franchise aspires to be, and that's where we're looking to get to by 2027 as well. So there is a ton of work to be done, but bringing in players who have won the Euro Cup, who have played in World Cups, who have a sense of aura in a community that we've never been able to be in before is very exciting to us. And TFC, as I suggest, built for success on and off the pitch. We compete for 5 trophies. So we compete for the Supporters Shield, for MLS Cup, for the Canadian Championship, the CONCACAF Champions League, which Seattle won last year as the first North American team to win the CONCACAF Champions League, and then the Club World Cup, which is what we would aspire to win, which Real Madrid just won. So that would be unbelievable. No one does it quite like our fans. Many of you, I'm sure, have been down to games, and there are so many opportunities if you are club directors or club coaches or whatever it might be to get down to games. My colleague Tiago right here runs our group ticket business, all of our on-field experiences, tours, all that kind of stuff. They have a booth downstairs if you're interested in talking about it. But there are so many opportunities, not just based on our partnership, but just based on ourselves being in Ontario, being a Major League Soccer franchise, to be able to give experiences to the kids at all of your clubs and really build something around Toronto FC and whatever your local club might be. And then this is a little snapshot of what we like to show partners. This is just a quick snapshot of a few stats. 48% of partners see an increase in consideration when they partner with us. 44% agree that being partnered with us demonstrates a brand of high quality. Those are big numbers. 7.4 million total TFC fans from coast to coast, with 4 million of them residing right here in Ontario, which is our target market. These are fans. We like to break these segments out into a number of things. There's fans, there's the hardcore fan, there's all these kind of things, so they're broken out into different segments, but from a straight fan standpoint, 4 million fans here in Ontario. And from a partnership standpoint, we build every single partnership tailored to the client that we're talking to. So the first meeting we ever have with a client is asking them to tell us what are their needs. You tell us about you, we're going to go back and we're going to find out how we can tailor a partnership with that, and then we'll work together to create the right partnership. It is a very dynamic situation and fluid between ourselves and our partners. While we may have contracts, and Bjorn can speak to this as well, while we might have contracts on paper with signatures, we work to do the best thing for our partners and our brands. And if this asset isn't working for this person, then there's opportunities to always kind of make changes and all that kind of stuff within a partnership. So this is our strategic approach. These are all very top level. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. Our partnership philosophy. Our mission is to build customized solutions that hit on our partners' objectives. We will accomplish this with X Company by leveraging our wide reach, always-on relevancy, and engagement-driven programming. Partner will succeed by providing value back to its fans, clients, business partners, and key stakeholders. That is a very vague and top-level comment on what our philosophy is, but it's also very to the point of what we're trying to do. We are trying to make our fans, your fans, and drive traffic to them and get you business. We already talked about some of these numbers, the impact of the partnerships. And the beautiful part of Ontario, but mainly the GTA and for us, is corporate Canada resides right in our backyard. So there's some great stats here, 323 billion generated annually in GDP, 40% of the Canadian business headquarters, 72 Fortune 500 companies are within 30 minutes of BMO Field. We have an amazing opportunity here in this province to really speak to the top partners and the top businesses available to us. I'm conscious of time here, so. And then this is really just, our roster is made up of globally recognized and iconic partners. So you'll see a number of them sitting there. Now, I talk about this at a high level, obviously, from a professional sports position, but there's also an opportunity very much so with our partnership with Ontario Soccer. We obviously have a lot of key partners. We have similar partners. BMO is a big partner of ours, big partner of Ontario Soccer. We will be announcing an auto partnership shortly, which will have dealerships in all your local markets. We want to be able to work with you and your local teams to be able to help you in terms of different partnerships that might make sense to both of us. If we have common partners, we would love to work with you guys to help you in your local market. So if X Auto partner has a dealer that you haven't had a chance to get into and be able to talk to, we'd love to be able to kind of bridge that gap and help you guys get that kind of stuff going. So that's very top level, very quick shoot through of kind of what the business is. It's obviously much more robust and a lot more to it, but I don't know if there's questions or we just wait till the end or.
Yeah, we wait till the end, but first of all, a round of applause. For everyone's benefit, when we talk to the speakers you hear here this afternoon, we challenge them to try to extrapolate what makes them great at their level and try to offer up some little morsels of some nuggets. I think we heard the term nuggets, not necessarily chicken. I think we stay with gold. And a couple of things that I know from having worked with TFC for the last 5 years, I'm looking forward to another 5-year term. The 3 things for all of you scratching your heads thinking, yeah, well, that's all nice. They have BMO Field, they have millions of dollars in budget, they have MLSE behind them. How does that help me at my local club? A few takeaways that I think you should really commit your mind to is what Pat said about the discovery in your partnerships. Doesn't matter if it's $100,000, $1 million partnership, or $5,000 partnership. Don't sell them an off-the-shelf type of package, gold, silver, bronze. Meet with people, understand their business challenges. How are you a solution? And if it's Joe's Pizza down the road, down the corner from your club, how can you drive traffic to Joe's Pizza? Through an innovative pizza registration night, or whatever the case may be. But really think of it as a microcosm. This is working in a big context. You can make it work in a local context. The other thing really important is the 2026 World Cup. You saw clearly the kind of focus and attention and energy around the game with the recent Olympic gold medal win of the women. The 2022 FIFA World Cup, soccer was on every channel all the time, 24/7. You guys are soccer. You represent soccer in the local sphere. We always talk about it, Ontario soccer. The clubs in particular are the storefront of the game. That's where the magic happens. That's where the consumer comes in order to get their soccer experience. It's a bit like if you look at Tim Hortons. Ontario Soccer might be Tim Hortons HQ. We make sure there's fair trade coffee beans in your coffee and we have great donut recipes. But at the end of the day, the parents and the kids come to you for their soccer experience. And so the stronger the soccer experience is at your level, the more you'll have opportunities to engage partners in that whole situation. So keep some of these things in mind. We'll move it along in the interest of time. We have lots of good content yet to come, and then maybe we have a couple of minutes in the end for some questions. So with that in mind, Ron, we'll bring you up next, please.
Ron.
A warm welcome for Ron Weiss from
You like that?
Okay, thanks.
guys working together with technology. That can only go right? So.
Indeed. I started out in this game in 1998 when my daughter said, "Dad, can I go play soccer with my friends?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So out she went. She was amazing at what she did. She ended up being playing at the highest level. She was offered scholarships, a great opportunity. That was when soccer was early. And I'm so glad to see that we have the soccer development that we've had, because what that means is that all these little children are running around saying, "There's where I can go. There's where I can go." Now, not all of them make there, but they still have that culture. And so the culture of soccer has grown. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture of soccer in terms of local involvement. Local involvement, for me, involves the parents, involves volunteers. Little question here, I started in 1998 as a volunteer, and I'm still a volunteer. So how many people in this room would consider themselves a volunteer? Hands up. Look around, folks. Lots of volunteers. That's important because volunteers are an asset. And we have to treat them like an asset. We have to work with them like they are an asset. We have to grow them like an asset. And so when the founder of Nothers, Jim, and Jim, just stand up. I know you don't want to do this, but I have to do it anyway. Very few businesses survive 52 years without having a culture. And when I met with him, he was at the Aurora Youth Soccer Club with me. And we were going through exactly the same thing that I'm going to talk about here, which is developing a volunteer plan. And he said, gee, that looks really good. Maybe I can learn something from that. And so what we've been doing over the last little while is helping to grow the culture of recognition and rewards in our clubs. But now I work with Sport Aurora. I'm the president of Sport Aurora, 42 sport organizations. Virtually every child that plays sport in our community of Aurora is involved in that organization. And so we work hard with them on trying to develop their most important asset, which is their volunteers. Here's some information. So we go through this, and when Jim talks to me earlier, he said, well, you know, what is a volunteer? Where are they? How do we get them? How do we keep them? Because it's very important that you understand how much volunteerism goes on, because they're competitors to you. If you look at what the Conference Board of Canada said, 46% of our entire population volunteers in one way or another. Good job, Canada. You've got a bunch of really good volunteers, people who want to believe in their communities and want to contribute to the communities in a variety of different ways. And there are the 4 sectors, and those are in order, by the way. Sport attracts the most volunteers. Youth services, so we have the Optimists, for instance, and the Friends of Youth, so they have a lot of volunteers. So they work outside of sport, but with youth. We have adult services. You can look at all sorts of foundations that are identifying needs of adults. And of course, charities and foundations that have volunteers and thrive through volunteerism. So the value of volunteerism is estimated in Canada presently at about $55.9 billion annually, and that's based upon them working your hours that you work only at minimum wage. The real truth is that most of the people that work in volunteerism work in not-for-profit organizations, and the value of not-for-profit organizations in our country is almost $90 billion in revenue. So this is an enormous sector from a business perspective, and we ought to be very careful about managing it and working with it. These are not just mom and dads. These are people who are contributing to our society, and it's extremely valuable. So we did a little study in our sport organization about volunteers, and we actually did it when COVID hit. And COVID, of course, exposed the fragility of sponsorships, and it exposed the fragility of volunteers. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand right now also. How many of you who are running sport organizations or soccer organizations in your community have some concern about getting volunteers back onto the pitch? Raise your hands. Look around, folks. That makes you stay up at night, doesn't it? Makes you worried about things. And so when I do workshops with people, I ask them what keeps them happy and what makes them sad and what makes them worry, and that is one of them. All right. So now here's what we found out about our volunteers when we did our study. Is that volunteers have a variety of needs. Some of them are declared and some are undeclared. The declared ones are say, hey, I want to coach. I want to run this. I want to do that. Others go, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to volunteer. A little girl, a little guy said, Daddy, Mom, can I participate? That's the best thing you can hear from your child, by the way, because when that happens and you volunteer to coach your child, the research shows that you become closer to that child than if you had not done it before. It's a really important bonding thing, so you want to do it. They identify with volunteerism. When I say identify, they're proud of being a volunteer. And they will say so. And social media is really important for this. Volunteers are networked. So all those people that are out there helping you are also helping others, and they know each other, and they're connected with each other. They're underappreciated, and they're underserviced. We don't say thank you enough. We don't show them about what they do and why they do it enough. And they're underserviced in that we often don't give them even the bare essentials of things they need to be successful, such as training. They're educated and talented, but they don't want to do what they've always done. They want to do something new. And the biggest mistake is to say to a financial planner and a guy that works in numbers all day long, would you come on and be my treasurer? And he goes, no, sorry, I'm not interested in being a treasurer. I work with numbers all day long. Leave me alone. What can I learn from you? What can I do? What can you show me that will make my life a lot more meaningful? And when I go home and talk to my wife or my husband or my kids, it's not all about numbers. It's about something cool that happened on the field of play. That is very, very important. So don't underestimate who they are. Find out who they are. So I really like what you're talking about. Find out about your corporate, your sponsors. You need to know who they are. You need to know who these people are. And the closer you can get to them, the better off you're going to be. So we do SWOT analysis with people, and I think this is what Jim saw when we were at the AYSC with me. And the SWOT analysis is important, and just because of time, what I'm going to do is to go right to the bottom right corner there, which is a threat. Every time I do a SWOT analysis with a local soccer organization, or even a provincial or national one, the biggest threat to their survival and their existence is the lack of volunteers. You just said it here before. You put your hand up because I'm worried about volunteers. That's a problem. All right? So you need to also know what kind of strengths and weaknesses you have within your organization. Do you have good communication channels? Do you have good people who are trained? Do you have access to training? And then you have to look at the opportunities. You know, what are the opportunities in your organization to gather, get, train, and retain all of those people? So a SWOT analysis is really important to understand what's going on with you. So we've come up with a 4R plan. There's really 5 there, but I lumped the last 2 together. The 4 R's are recruitment, records, retention, and then reward and recognition. I'll run through them very quickly. First of all, recruitment is how do you get them in the front door? Now, we used to kid around about being a hostage or a prisoner, but a hostage is when your child comes to you and said, Dad, I want you to coach me. Would you do that, please? You're a hostage. You're a coach. Because they've asked you to do it. You should be proud of that. The prisoner one is the organization comes to you and says, you know, we're not going to be able to run that U6 team unless you decide to coach. How many of you have been a hostage or prisoner? Hands up. Yeah, look at somebody with 2 and 3 hands up. Right? So they work. But there's a little problem with that because they tend to leave immediately when the kid leaves or they decide to do something else. So you have to worry about retention. So retention is down a little bit, but I'll go to retention. And a big problem with retention is expectations of the person who's volunteering change. They came in for one reason, and that reason's satisfied, and now they're going someplace else because their expectations have changed. They don't want to do that anymore. And what the best thing you can do is have this succession plan that'll take them from an assistant coach to a head coach to a tournament manager to whatever else they're interested in. But if you don't ask, you don't know, and then suddenly you find people leaving. And anybody in sales knows it's far better to keep a customer than it is to find a new one. So it's always better to treat them very well and find out and stay close to them. I hope you've got a volunteer coordinator. I hope you've got somebody who knows what they're doing in volunteer coordination, because if they do, then they are your asset manager. Go back up to records keeping. Want another thing that keeps you awake at night? Ever sat there at night and go, gee, do we have our records secure? Personal information in there? Phone number sector screening, police checks, very important stuff in there. Is it secure? Do I have insurance? What if somebody breaks in? Is it online? Is it secure online? If that doesn't keep you up at night, maybe tonight it will. And maybe you're gonna have to think about how you're gonna manage your records. Are these these records available, and are they current? Geez, all my coaches, have they had their vulnerable sector screening, and when they're gonna pop up when they're expired and when they have to do it? Okay, so you can worry about that later on if you like. Now the last thing here is reward and recognition, so I'm going to move to that. That's what I'm really here for on behalf of Nothers, because Nothers has that culture, and I talked about culture before. The culture of this is you need a culture of recognition and develop that inside your organization. So a culture of recognition is this. It's not a medal. It's not a trophy. It doesn't matter if it's crystal or acrylic or what it's used for. The recognition is simply, great job. I've been watching what you've been doing. You're fantastic with those kids. That's recognition. Because at the end of the day, it's a personal thing. People want to feel valued. And you can do that. And it's not hard to do it, but you have to have a culture of doing it. So it's not just the president and the board members and even a coach. It's everybody in the organization has to start saying, attaboy, attagirl, because that's going to help. It fosters the culture of recognition. So because this culture of recognition is endemic with Jim and his crew, and we've talked to the Ontario Soccer Association so many times, Soccer Association says, yeah, that's our culture too. We need this. How do we get it? And one of the barriers, of course, is money in every organization. So what's happened here is the award store with Nothers have worked with Ontario Soccer, and they pulled together a program that will help people enter into a program. So if you don't have a program and you want one, you can get one for half price right now, and all the expertise that goes along with it. And you can get started. And Jim and I were talking just earlier of experience he's had with a couple of other clubs where there are co-op students. I used to teach at Seneca College, and I know a lot of people in those areas, and they're looking for interns, co-op students. We have a plan that is just ready for them to take charge of and to move through your organization. So I want to encourage you to connect with Jim and us and talk a little bit more about it. The purpose of that program is to aid in the financing naturally, because if you can't afford it, you can't do it. But second of all, we're really looking at best practices. If you think that I know everything, I don't know everything, Jim doesn't know everything either. There are great things going on out there, just as that intern program that he just told me about, that everybody can benefit from. This is work. This is not easy, but it's actually fun when you start developing that culture of recognition in your community. So what we're going to be asking with this is, if you participate in this program, we want to hear from you. We want to know what went well, what didn't go well. We want to try the things that didn't go well, and maybe we can fix them. But more importantly, we want to be able to share the information that happens in Club XYZ with everybody in Ontario Soccer. And so once you join into this program, what we want is to connect with you, and we want you to be able to help us, and we're going to also identify on SoccerNet that you're one of those clubs that cares about those volunteers, and that here's the information about that. Eligibility, well, if you're a member in good standing, doesn't matter what size of club you are, you're eligible for this discount. And basically, all it is it's going to go through 2023, so it's time to hop onto it right now and get in the game with this. We're interested in Kaizen, continuous improvement. I'm just about done.
It's the orchestra.
And so all we're saying is join in, make an application. Jim and his staff will work with you, give you the plan, and let you go. They have a number of these things up here. If you're interested, you're welcome to take the brochures. And after that, questions coming later, there's the guy who's been identified for soccer to be the guru of all of this. So Brad is downstairs, and we're downstairs as well. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry I didn't went over by 45 seconds.
We're covering all sorts of angles, but clearly topics that are day-to-day realities. And without further ado, because we need to hear from these
Hi, everybody. I'm Sean Guest. I'm the VP of Commercial Operations for the Canadian Premier League. It's great to be here, Bjorn. Thank you very much for having me and for hosting such a great event. It's great to see everyone here today. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to chat with you guys about one of our founding partners, the Canadian Premier League, which is Volkswagen Canada. Before I do that, I wanted to do a little trivia. We've got, because we're in Ottawa, we've got a lovely Ottawa jersey here, athletic Ottawa jersey. If someone can tell me, if someone can tell me the name of the team in the Bundesliga that Volkswagen owns.
Wolfsburg.
Sorry, who's first?
Wolfsburg.
You got it, all right. That was easy? There you go. You got some fits? There you go, exactly. All right. Got it. All right, so I think just to kick things off, I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of insight in terms of Volkswagen Canada, our partnership with them. They're a founding partner of the Canadian Premier League. The CPL has been around since 2019. We're going into our fifth season, so very excited. And obviously it's been a little bit of a bumpy ride with COVID and having a couple of years where we couldn't have full stadiums or play in front of fans. So we're excited to be entering our fifth season and to continue to grow. Excuse me. So I'll just show you a little video that's a commercial spot that we use with Volkswagen here. Hopefully it works.
Who's this game for? For those just making their start? Or those with the whole city on their back? For those who are always game? Or those who are pioneers? For those who are chasing glory? Or is it for all of us? Volkswagen.
Right. So that spot aired pretty extensively over the Euro Cup in 2020, I guess 2021. So we're very proud of the partnership with Volkswagen, and you can see in the commercial spot their ethos around Be the Change. So I wanted to talk about how they've managed to impact our communities across our ACPL markets. So one of the things that we introduced last year with that was a program called Volkswagen FC Game Changers. And essentially what they were trying to do is how can we create a program that we can roll out across the country that speaks to our ethos around Be the Change and highlight key communities and key community members across the country that are making a difference. So we've introduced this program. It started last year. Andy Petrillo, as you may know Andy, she was the program's ambassador last year, and we had 11 recipients, so a starting 11 of community ambassadors, ranging from current CPL players like Marco Carducci, who had a very public battle with testicular cancer and just his recovery, and him being an advocate for men's health. We had all sorts of different people from walks of life speaking to diversity, inclusion. Working with underprivileged kids across different soccer communities and really making a difference. And there was prize money that was given in their name to their local charities, and Volkswagen was essentially funding that and being the face of the program. And really wanted to try and find a way to give back to the communities that the CPL exists in, and our fans and our leaders in the community. One of the cool things that Volkswagen's done is their tiny car. You may have seen it again at the Euro Cup. We had a similar tiny car that was across the CPL. We really wanted to try and get it into all of our communities across the country. And I think one of the unique things with Volkswagen, that sets them apart is that they've really worked with us collaboratively to say, what are the opportunities? What can we do together, as opposed to just saying, hey, we want to do this program. This is what we're going to do, and let's go execute it. They actually worked with us to develop the program. And it was part of this with the tiny car piece as an example. It was the most viewed TikTok video they had on their channel. Like it was 25 million people viewed it. So and you can see the Pride themed car that we had across the country. We'll talk about that in a second here. But really spectacular way for them to get into the communities and have different events with the tiny car as part of it. I think diversity and inclusion is certainly something that's that's very important for us at the CPL and our clubs, and I think we worked closely with 3 of our clubs in particular to kick that off last year, and in Calgary, Halifax, and Pacific. So there was donations made to different Pride centers in these communities. We had our players be part of the Pride marches in Halifax in particular was a really important one. You can see some of the pictures there, and just really making it authentic, right? Making sure that Volkswagen gave a voice to the clubs so they could speak to these things, these issues that we're all facing across the country, not just in soccer. And they felt it was really important. And I think we're going to continue this. We're going to roll this out into more communities this year, and really excited to do that. I think that just kind of in a nutshell just encapsulates Volkswagen's partnership. I think we've worked with them in their local dealerships to get into our community, so it's not just a national program, it also gets into our local communities as well. But just knowing that we're here together, we're partners in Ontario Soccer. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that we all face, right? And I think from a sponsorship perspective, we're all here to be to sell sponsorships and help grow our businesses, and obviously you're no different. And I think that's an important revenue stream for you and for us. And I think we hear a lot of the same challenges that I'm sure you're hearing, right? You guys have a lack of resources to go out and sell sponsorship, right? It's not easy, and that's something that how do we figure that out? There's no easy answer to it, but there certainly creates some opportunities for us at the same time. I think how do you package your assets? You've all got different assets depending on your club, your association, where you are, your location. And how do you do that, right? Is it the gold, silver, bronze kind of old school kind of way of doing it, or is there other ways that you can package your assets in unique ways, and maximize your revenue? And I think ultimately try to find out. And I think this was touched on a couple of times here already. Just what do the brands want from a partnership from you? Ultimately, what do you have that they want, right? I think in identifying that and making that clear will be very helpful, I think. And I think just having resources or to actually activate. And I think that's a big challenge we're seeing across the board with partners and at the national level as well as the regional level, and just a lack of resources to activate, right? I think everyone, they pay a certain fee to be a sponsor, but then they actually have to pay more over and above that to make the partnerships come to life, and that can be challenging. And we're still working with our partners, and there's no easy answer, especially looking at where we're at economically right now, and a living recession, and there's limited resources. We have to figure out how to make sure that we bring these partnerships to life so that they're successful and that we can renew them and they come back. I think in terms of just some of the opportunities, though, at the same time, I think it's been touched on a few times. Patrick made this point around just the fact that the growth in soccer is just unprecedented, and it's a very desirable avenue for brands to want to be in. And I think they can access key demographics. I was reading a statistic from Stats Canada the other day. Right now, there's visible minorities make up 27% of our population. In 2041, it will make up 41%. So there's going to be a massive growth. There is massive growth. There was a record number of new Canadians this year, over almost 500,000, of which 1 in 3 are identified as soccer fans. So there's great opportunities with new Canadians coming in to the country, and I think that's what makes our country unique. And I think that I think in parallel with soccer, I think it very much lines up that way. And I think there's just an authentic story to be told, around soccer, and I think for partners that want to be, and we're seeing this, with brands wanting to be involved in soccer right now, whether it's with Toronto FC or the CPL, our national teams, people want to be on the ground floor as they see soccer growing, and they want to be seen as authentic, so that when we get to the pinnacle, we get to 2026, they're seen as having been there for the long term and investing long term, and we hope that continues. And one other thing I'll just quickly touch on as well. I just want to be mindful of time here, of course, but it's just listening. What do brands ultimately want? What do they want? And it's as opposed to talking to them about what you have and what assets you have and the demographics that you have. Listen. I think that's a big thing, and you'll get a lot out of the conversation if you just listen and ask great questions and find out what their objectives are, what you can do to help, knowing your organization's better than anyone, so you'll know what assets you have and what opportunities those assets will bring for you. It's just making sure that you can line up the opportunity with the asset. And I think just simplicity, right? I think sometimes I do it all the time, you overcomplicate things and trying to make these really cool, awesome programs that have lots of depth and breadth. At the end of the day, just simplicity, right? It's just simple and easy to understand is always important, and that can get lost. So. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions as we get to towards the end here, and maybe we can chat about some of these things and some of the challenges you guys are all facing. But certainly appreciate the time, the opportunity, and look forward to continuing discussion.
A couple of things for you to maybe also contemplate based on what we've seen here. If you put yourself into that opportunity, and we talked about the old adage of gold, silver, bronze packages, park that notion way off to the side. It doesn't work anymore, if it ever did work. But think of things that make you as an organization relevant to your stakeholders, both your consumers, your customers, the parents, the kids, but also the companies that you want to drive sponsorship to. And think about what is important right now. You're hearing lots about safe sport this weekend. You hear some messages around diversity, equity, inclusion. This is not just a fad. This is not just a flavor of the month. This is the new must-do way of doing business. So rather than peddling a goal-level sponsorship package, maybe talk to a company about your new diversity initiatives, or your new, how do you bring gender equity into your programs, and how can they help you? We have a new partnership that you heard about this weekend with BMO. There will be gender equity programming. There will be some youth leadership events that we will host across the province, and we want to talk, when I say we, Ontario Soccer, we would like to engage with some of you in different regions to bring that to life. Because that's a new way of doing business. That's how soccer rises to the occasion and does more than just teaching kids, okay, this is how you pass with your right foot, this is how you pass with your left foot. Well, how about we build some better people in the process and use the power of the sport for that? So, you know, these are opportunities for you to contemplate, leave the old stuff behind, and embrace the new stuff. And on that happy note, talking about new stuff, no better person to close us out than our esports expert. Please join me again in welcoming Bryce Eldridge, please.
Thanks, Aaron. I actually just quickly what you just said, I love, because I say that to a lot of people. Like, you guys represent soccer, and obviously that's the tool that you're using to connect with people. But the strategy that you're helping the brand that you might be partnering with achieve is what you just talked about. Like the ability to because these brands they're talking about all these things all the time, right? And BMO doesn't sit here and just say I want to be in soccer. They're in soccer for a reason, and it's all of our jobs to help connect those dots for people. And so funny enough, that's like a very good segue into sort of just why MLSE is in this business. And so you see the words esports and gaming up on the strategy on the title slide here, and just there's a bit of a delineation. Gaming is like a really tough word because it means millions of different things. It's almost like partnerships. Like everybody uses that word to be defined like 75,000 different things. In this world, there's esports, which is like the competition that people are literally pro gamers, the way your players are pro athletes competing for championships, trophies, playoffs, prize money, all these different things. And then there's gaming culture, which is just literally the notion that video games are a really important part of so many people's lives. It's this amazingly strong passion point that millions of people are connecting with every day. And it's actually that second part that is the stronger and scalable opportunity. Esports is almost the way that you sort of build yourself the authentic way into the space. It's why we can talk about it. It's why we are able to even be in a conversation. But what we're really trying to get after is that broader, tap into the notion that everybody is gaming, people are loving it. You're seeing changes in media consumption habits every day, generationally, and really at the end of the day, that main point that I have up here is about future-proofing our business. We're not blind to the fact that the Maple Leafs are one of our biggest and most strongest assets, but it's also a lot of that's founded on generational history. People loving that game and passing that down to their kids and continuing the cycle. We can't live off of that forever. It isn't going to be that way. Maybe it takes a while. Maybe we're talking 50 years from now. Maybe the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup this year and we reset the clock and it's another 100 years. But the idea is that you've got to love it. Hey, every time somebody gets up in front of the room, they make a joke about the Maple Leafs. Somebody did it yesterday. Who did it? Yeah, you did it.
Harry Carmen.
Hey, it's all good. I feel like you said you were in politics before, right?
I was in the public service, yes, working.
I've seen politicians do it quite a bit. And listen, it works, right? Because as we just learned, I'm in the minority. Big win last night, though. But anyway, so the idea is that okay, we can't just keep doing the same thing that we've been doing and just hope that that's going to continue this business of ours. The Raptors, obviously, really strong, win the championship, capture the attention of a nation, and we continue to ride that momentum. But they're having a tough year right now, and you're seeing some of the ebbs and flows that engagement and fan and audience kind of come to the table. TFC is the same. Won the championship, had a couple of tough years. The pandemic has really drawn our audience away from us a little bit. We've been making some huge swings with player acquisitions, but you gotta win in order to fully continue to grow and engage. So all while that's happening, there's a lot that we can't control there. What we can control is learning about what people's behaviors are like today in terms of where they're sitting, where they're spending their time and their money, and what that might look like for the next generation. We also, while we're doing this, get to create some new opportunities for our partners. I'll touch on a few examples of some stuff that we've done. This also is effectively creating new properties for us that allow us to continue to generate revenue in different ways, test and learn a little bit. Our partners have been wonderful at coming along this journey with us and taking a few different experiments along the way with us. There's actually, I'll get to it in a second, but we did one with BMO and Bjorn and the team in Ontario Soccer that many of you hopefully at least saw and potentially even participated in. Because it was something that we really loved, but we want to make sure that we're continuing to grow and amplify that program. I already touched on this notion that millions of people are gamers. This is an avenue that we haven't necessarily connected with. And while it may seem disconnected from our core business now, there's ways for us to connect those things in because our players are gamers, our fans are gamers, our staff are gamers, and there's a bunch of people who aren't necessarily fans of ours today that are. And bringing that passion over and bringing it back into our ecosystem is the goal. It's a long-term thing. And then at the end of the day, we also have two competitive programs that we get more chances to win because winning is the best. And why not give yourself more chances to win a few trophies? So esports. We have two main competitive programs that we're fortunate enough to have been connected to our partners at the leagues who set these up for us. And they gave us this really risk-free, low-cost, trustworthy opportunity, because I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the dog's breakfast of the landscape that is the world of esports. If you've seen presentations, you've probably seen numbers that talk about esports being bigger than the Super Bowl and the World Cup combined. And some of this stuff is insane. It is. It's wrong, actually. We like to talk about it a bit more realistically, and also know that the NBA and Major League Soccer in particular have a really strong focus to be walking this journey with us. So they've invested a ton of resources and time and their people in setting up these leagues. The NBA 2K League that you see on the left here are 5 players who play for Raptors Uprising is the name of our team. This is our biggest program. The NBA has gone all in this world. They partner with the game publisher called Take-Two. They make NBA 2K. It's really the only NBA video game on the market. There's a few others, but they're not competitive. It's not a big seller. They don't even come out every year. NBA 2K is a global phenomenon. You're talking about 20 million people who play this game globally, primarily in North America. So there's an audience right there. You have a series of pro players, and the league has kind of set this up. We can have this conversation about the structure of this over a beer. It's probably about 3 beers worth because there's lots to unpack there. But we're excited. Our season kicks off March 8th, and it goes through to the end of the summer. So we have 5 new players, none of which have ever been to Canada before. So obviously the guys from Florida and Atlanta, we've had to do a lot of selling to keep them in the city because they got seen snow before. It's a bad time, but we're excited. And then on the right is our participation in EMLS. EMLS is a bit simpler. It's a bit of a smaller scale opportunity. It matches FIFA's the game, FIFA globally structured league setup where effectively you hire one player. That's Nui, aka Goal Machine, who represents Toronto FC in EMLS. There are 3 EMLS competitions that happen throughout the year. They're a combination of online and live in-person events. The third one will be coming up in Austin, connected to the South by Southwest Festival, which is actually a really great stage to be on, to be able to connect to this already well-established tech and innovation-driven festival to see if our boy Nui can take down some of the sort of stronger competitors in EMLS. For there, he plays a bunch of different sort of global tournaments. There is a FIFA Global World, so Nui, in theory, has the opportunity to represent Toronto FC and play against Real Madrid's EMLS esport athlete in what is effectively a global Champions League built off the game of FIFA. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars of prize money at stake here, and that's where the sort of big thing comes from. I think Nui can stand to make $500,000 this year playing FIFA if he won it, So we're excited to be given this opportunity without having to take a massive swing, like buying into, if you're familiar with any of these, the Call of Duty League, the Overwatch League. These game publishers are asking organizations for $40, $50 million franchise fees. And while yes, we're talking about the future here, I'm also owned by Rogers and Bell, and would have a tough time sitting in that boardroom explaining to them and Larry Tannenbaum why that would be a good use of their $40 million. I value my career, so we're going to stick with what we think works. The most exciting part of our portfolio for me is this new asset that we actually created this time last year. One of the stipulations of participating in the NBA 2K League is you have to have housing for your players in your local market, and you have to have a facility for them to train in. We had actually had this housed out of a house that we rented in the Scarborough Bluffs area. It's a pretty traditional sort of model for content in esports and gaming. You'd actually you'd be fascinated. I guarantee you, at least half of this room has like a kid or somebody who's watched this content, and it's just this like notion that the lifestyle that you can glean off of gaming lets you live in these mansions with your friends, and you're having a bunch of fun. You're making YouTube videos, broadcasting on Twitch, and all these different things. It was great, but there's a lot wrong with that model, especially because these guys play competitive games together. They have hard times. Like they used to have to like play a game, maybe they had a tough loss, and then they all go up to the kitchen and they gotta hang with each other. Terrible for teamwork. Imagine your clubs. You know, think of that. Like after a tough match, they all just go home and hang out with each other. They get to separate. You know, they're also like there's a training regime, right? They don't get to separate. They're home from their office. I love Pat. I've worked with him for 15 years. I don't have to work with him. It's amazing. It's great. Model works perfect. So we got the opportunity to move out of the house, and we rent some condos for them in the city of Toronto. But we took over an unused office space that MLSE owned at Coca-Cola Coliseum. It's where the Marlies play. It's right next to BMO Field, actually. And we created this state-of-the-art gaming facility that can be open 365 days a year, effectively. So 6 months out of the year, its primary focus is the NBA 2K League. Our players play games out of there. They play remotely. Sometimes they travel to Central Market in Washington, and it's like also a very common esports setup where you like play some games remote, then you play on stages for big prizes. We now have the opportunity to run community events. We have the opportunity to do partner activations. I have the opportunity to do any other kind of game that we want to play also, because this isn't about NBA 2K and FIFA exclusively now. Every game is popular in some way. There are so many organizations, schools, universities, just like grassroots esports companies who have set themselves up and they're building their own communities. We're not connecting with any of these people right now. This venue gives us that opportunity to do this. I was bugging Tiago over here literally all night about how you're selling group ticket packages to, soccer clubs, whoever you're selling it to. There's an opportunity to tie this venue and an gaming experience into this, layer on top with a night at BMO Field. You know, it doesn't exclusively mean that we just need to talk here about, anybody from here. We could do this basically all year long. And it is right where the Marlies play. So there's another huge opportunity for us to literally, like I said, have that experience tie in. So 50, 60 people at a time, which I think is really great. So there's this opportunity for us as soon as the NBA 2K League season is over and we celebrate a championship with a bottle of champagne that's we're going to be spraying around the stadium, and now we're ready to get back to work. But I'm really excited about this because we've never had this opportunity before, and we're just getting started with what this means to us. At the end of the day, like I said, this is really about that big number up there. We're doing some research on the landscape of gamers in Canada. 17.5 million people are suggesting that they play on a PC or a console. So the most important part of this stat is this is removing the mobile phone. Because I think if you added mobile phone in there, you're literally talking 30.5 million, the entire population of Canada. So what we want to do is we want to say, let's separate that, let's identify this gamer that we're actually talking about here. Part of the stuff that we're doing here is you look at this 4 million player number for FIFA explicitly. About 1 million of those people identify as Toronto FC fans. That's 3 million other people who have this game that we have connection to, that we have a strategy to kind of extract from, that aren't paying attention to us right now. They're probably fans of Madrid, Barcelona, United, City, you name it, right? They're soccer fans, they play this game. This is an entry point into getting them interested in Toronto FC, and that's part of the big strategy here. Like I said, our players are gamers, our fans are gamers, and we know that there are so many other people, and we know where they are and what they're interested in. It's really just about making sure that we're also paying attention to this potentially lucrative group. Whether they're lucrative today or tomorrow, doesn't matter. It's really just, this is something that we gotta be paying attention to. So, from a partnership perspective, there's so many different ways that we can do this. It's very similar to all of the things that the partnerships business that Pat talked about would offer to our partners. The one I want to quickly go through, because I'm almost done here, is this last one about combining online and live events. Because Bjorn and I, maybe back in 2018, it was long before the pandemic, we're talking about why don't we do a FIFA tournament with all of your associations. So the pandemic got in the way a little bit. We finally got like a test version of this off the ground in partnership with BMO, where what it was we had a call to action to everybody in this room to sign up, register your players. Let's play a FIFA tournament. Let's have it kind of culminate in a live event at BMO Field. And I'd say there was about 150 people in attendance at the final event. We had some pretty good participation from some of the clubs. We recognized that the communication that went out to you was just another email that I know you get a lot of. So we recognized that there's a bit of a how can we go a bit of a step further? And then to be honest, this is something that's not in the presentation, but over the last 24 hours, just hearing everybody, meeting a few of you, talking to you, I realized, Pat said something earlier, is something that we do at MLSE on an everyday basis in partnerships is we start this conversation by figuring out what's your challenge. What are you trying to solve for? And I realized that and I don't know if it's unique to this program or maybe it is just in general, I had no idea what any of your challenges are. I don't think I do still now. And I think, me being here and meeting a few of you and understanding that a little bit is gonna help us get to the root of how this kind of stuff can actually work. I mean, maybe we nailed it and we just gotta keep doing it. It's gotta be something that everybody looks forward to every year, right? The notion that this could be another way to create some fun rivalries amongst your clubs that doesn't involve travel, in our head was a really great idea, right? And maybe it is, and maybe we wanna continue to do that. But I also realized that I don't know what's going on with you guys on a day-to-day basis. What is going to be of value to you, and how can I help? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And like I said, this was really exciting and really great. It was a great start. I'm looking forward to seeing where we can take it.
This is usually when you see the soccer broadcast and the fourth official puts up the 5 minutes, there will be a minimum of 5 added minutes extra added on.
After this World Cup, it's 14.
Oh, well, 24, try not to go there. So, just for quick orientation, I hope you took some morsels away from this, especially on something like esports that some of us might not be really familiar with. It's hard to cover all the bases in 10-15 minutes. So take it as an invitation to start the dialogue. If you have aspirations or if you think your club audience, your organization might have appetite to get engaged, we have some resources here. We can put you in touch with Bryce and the team. This is the beginning of a potential journey. And of course, also look out for a new tournament offering later this summer, where we'd love for some of the additional clubs to jump aboard and excite your members with that added opportunity. Just from a housekeeping perspective, there is a snack and chat being offered downstairs in the lobby for those of you that feel a little peckish or the blood sugar has that afternoon dip. But I do want to invite our 4 speakers back onto the stage. So if you're thirsting for knowledge more than thirsting for pop, I think we'll keep them a couple of extra minutes. And of course, you might also be locked and loaded for the 3:45 session, which will be back in this room. So if you don't feel like moving, don't move at all. But first of all, another round of applause for all these speakers. Please don't feel bad. You need the refreshment. Go for it. If anyone has any questions, we invite those now. Come up.